multipolar world where we have a lot of countries that are developing these weapons, including China, that I worry about. And I worry about their DF-21 and DF-26 missile programs, their anti-carrier ballistic missile programs, if you will. INF doesn't address missiles launched from ships or airplanes, but it focuses on those land-based systems. I think there's goodness in the INF treaty. Anything you can do to limit nuclear weapons writ large is a general good, probably. But the aspects of the INF treaty that limit our ability to counter Chinese and other countries' cruise missiles, land-based missiles, I think is problematic.
And as you say, since the United States and Russia are the only two parties to the treaty, and you and General Silva and several other U.S. government officials have said that Russia is violating the treaty, that means the United States is the only country in the world, that unilaterally refuses to build missiles that have a range of 500 to 5,500 kilometers.
That is correct.
Do you think that we should consider renegotiating or withdrawing from the treaty or declaring Russia a material breach?
I would never advocate unilateral withdrawing from the treaty because of the nuclear limitation part of it. But I do think we should look at renegotiating the treaty. We should consider that because, as you say, there's only two countries that signed on to it, and one of them doesn't follow it, and so you know that becomes a unilateral limitation on us.
So one final question then. There's three scenarios. One is Russia comes back into compliance. The United States and Russia comply. Two is we somehow withdraw from or abrogate or declare Russia a material breach, so we are no longer unilaterally controlled. Or we continue the status quo, where we unilaterally are the only country that that refuses to develop those missiles. Surely, whatever you think between 1 and 2, we can't accept 3 going forward, can we?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of the Chairman, Senator Warren, please.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for being here, Admiral Harris. In your posture statement last year, you described the Asia-Pacific rebalance as, quote, a strategic whole of government effort that guides and reinforces our military efforts, integrating with diplomatic, political, and economic initiatives. You still agree with that statement, Admiral?
I do, ma'am. You know, we labeled it the rebalance in the previous administration, and in the early days of the previous administration, we labeled it the pivot.
Yes.
I think the labeling of whatever it is we do is less important than the whatever it is we do.
And that's actually the part I wanted to focus on, because I agree with you on this. And I just have a simple question right here, and that is whether or not funding cuts to agencies that conduct diplomacy and development and perform other civilian functions would make your job easier or more difficult.
I believe it would make it more difficult. I'm reminded of what famous French Foreign Minister Talleyrand said, the head of the French Army, Marshal Ney. He said, when my profession fails, yours must come to the rescue. I think that we're not in a good place if we're that bifurcated, but also I believe that if the State Department fails earlier because of funding, then we'll have to, quote unquote, come to the rescue sooner.
Yeah.
And I'd rather, push that off to the right rather than bring it to the left.
Yeah, that's a very powerful point. I just want to note for the record that the Trump administration in its budget blueprint calls for about a 29% cut to the State Department and significant cuts to other agencies with international responsibilities. Obviously, there is a strong military component to the Asia-Pacific and keeping us safe there, but as you say, it takes a lot more in this vital region to keep us safe. So I want to shift, if I can, to North Korea. We are dealing here with a real threat from a dangerous, unstable, nuclear-armed state. And despite tough sanctions, North Korea continues to be provocative. I'm concerned that this is a brewing crisis that would escalate without warning. We went over to the White House yesterday, and the administration said again that the time for strategic patience is over. Now, I think it's still not clear precisely what their new strategy is. By all accounts, North Korea is continuing its efforts to develop a nuclear-armed interballistic missile system that could reach the continental U.S. coastline. And in recent days, administration officials have talked about shooting down a North Korean ballistic missile test. So, Admiral, could you talk a little bit about the strategic considerations that we must take into account before taking such an action? What are the upsides and downsides to shooting down one of their test missiles here?
Well, there's a capability issue. There's a geometry issue of where that missile is going, and all of that. So if they're launching a test missile that we think is going to land in Korea or Japan, then I think we're obligated to do what we can.
I understand that, but just shooting down a test missile in general. As I understand it, what I've been trying to read about this, experts on North Korea's war plans say that Kim Jong-un would likely respond to U.S. military action with massive escalation against South Korea, Japan, perhaps even the United States, if we shot down a test missile. So I'm just asking, do you agree with that assessment? And if so, how is it that the administration should take this dynamic into account as it formulates its North Korea policy?
A lot of what you're asking, Senator, is being deliberated in the administration now. And I'm in a difficult position when asked to comment on ongoing process deliberations. So I'm going to defer on that. But I will say that there are if we don't maintain credible combat power to confront Kim Jong-un's testing and his development goals, then we're going to be in a position to be blackmailed by KJU. And I think that's probably a worse place to be. And I think that we'll all agree that everything that's been done up to this point has not worked in deterring Kim Jong-un. So all of the military capabilities that we have, all of our alliances and all of that have not deterred Kim Jong-un's desires to achieve a nuclear weapon that can reach the United States. So we must stop that somehow.
Well,
and so those options I think, are on the table. All of those options are on the table.
The somehow, though, is the question, and I see that I'm out of time, so I'm going to quit here, and we can continue this conversation later. But that's precisely the question we're trying to ask about, and why it is that I'm asking the question about what the upsides and downsides are if we take action directly on one of these testing missiles, right, whether or not it escalates. And this gives him provocation to invade South Korea, to bomb Japan, otherwise. And so,
I think that he has he can manufacture whatever provocation he wants to attack South Korea or Japan or us. I think that the manufacture of provocations it resides with him.
I appreciate that. But I have to say on this one, Admiral, I think that we need the administration to be clearer about what they have in mind here. You rightly say this is under discussion, but what that means to me at this point is that no one knows exactly what it is that we plan to do here. And if no one knows here in the United States, if the American people don't know, if Kim Jong-un doesn't have some idea of what the response will be if he continues this testing, I think it's difficult for it to have any kind of deterrent effect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
On behalf of Chairman McCain, Senator Norris, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Admiral, thank you very much for being here today. I know the region is in a really precarious time and situation, but we do appreciate you taking time out to be with us. In a February speech, you warned the audience of the perils of linear thinking, saying instead that we need to think exponentially in order to develop strategies and technologies that give us an asymmetric advantage over regional threats. And I absolutely 100% agree with you. As chair of the Emerging Threats and Capabilities Subcommittee, I'm very, very frustrated with the oftentimes slow